How should Christians respond to the news? We are living in an age of constant information. You think just 100 years ago, it could take 4 or 5 days for a message to travel across the country, but today it just takes seconds. News breaks instantly, updates stream continuously, and we're not just receiving information. We are being bombarded by it. In fact, most Americans check the news throughout the day on all their many devices, and we're shaped not only by the journalists, but by influencers and commentators and all those algorithms that are really driving it all. And as a result, we're overwhelmed, not just with the information, but I think also with the pressure. There's pressure to stay informed. There's pressure to have an opinion. There's pressure to often voice that opinion. But as Christians, we need to take a step back and we need to ask, well, how should I respond to all the news that is constantly being bombarded at me? The Bible gives us a starting point. It's in Jeremiah chapter 9, verses 23 and 24. Thus says the Lord, let not the wise man boast in his wisdom. Let not the mighty man boast in his might. Let not the rich man boast in his riches, but let him who boasts boast in this, that he understands and knows me. In other words, our focus isn't to be experts on everything that's happening in the world, but just to be people who know God. And when we know God, it really shapes the way we respond to everything, including the news. Let me leave you with 4 truths about God that I think steady us. First, God knows all things. Sometimes it's hard to know what's true. There's conflicting reports, there's competing narratives, there's tons of misinformation. But Psalm 139 reminds us that God knows everything completely and accurately and exhaustively. Even before a word is on my tongue, the psalmist says, behold, O Lord, you know it all together. You and I, we don't have to figure out everything because God already knows. Secondly, though, God controls all things. He's not just aware of what's happening. He's a God who rules over it all. He governs nature. He does whatever he pleases in heaven and on earth and the seas and in all the deep. He governs nations. I love what Proverbs 21 says. The king's heart is a stream of water in the hand of the Lord. And what does he do? Well, he turns it wherever he wills. Our God governs the details of our lives. Nothing in the news is outside his authority. We need to remember that. But we also need to remember, thirdly, that God uses all things. Passages like Ephesians 1 tell us that God works all things according to the counsel of his will. And that includes the things that seem chaotic or evil. I'm reminded of Joseph in Genesis 50, where he said, as for you, this is to his brothers, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good. Human suffering, sin, even global unrest, those things aren't wasted. God has a purpose for all of it. Psalm 76, verse 10 says, surely the wrath of man shall please you. And if God has a purpose for the anger and the wrath of man, he has a plan and a purpose for his people, for those who belong to him. Romans 8 reminds us, we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. And where does that lead us? Well, finally, we can trust God in all things. Because God knows all things, because he controls it all, he uses it all, we can trust him in all things. And that includes everything that we see in the headlines, which means, comfortingly, we don't have to know everything. We don't have to form an opinion about everything. We don't even have to voice what we think about everything. God hasn't called us to be omniscient. Rather, he's just called us to be faithful. So when the news feels overwhelming, when you feel anxious about it all, frustrated, uncertain, ask yourself this. Am I trying to figure out what only God knows? Or am I trusting him with all that he controls? And then let your heart settle here in the words of the hymn writer. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus than to trust and obey. We can do that with all the news.